Well, to discuss and maybe debate this issue further, we're joined in the studio by Daniel Pomerantz, who's an attorney, senior editor at Honest Reporting. And from Washington, we're going to have Omar Baddar, a deputy director at the Arab American Institute. Thank you for joining us. Daniel, let me start with you. How is this policy, say, declaring Israel a victor, how would that be constructive in the current context of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict?
Well, we should be clear, first of all, that it's not a mainstream position. Most Israelis aren't even aware of it, and the language of victory and defeat is really quite dramatic. And there's debate here in Israel about whether it's helpful or not. And I should be clear that with Honest Reporting, we don't take a political position, so if I express a political opinion, it's mine and not theirs. But the director of this project, E.J. Kimball, said he was referring specifically to Palestinian rejectionism, referring to the fact that over the course of, since 1937, the Palestinian leadership, not the people necessarily, but the leadership, have turned down some 9 offers of statehood and independence. If you can imagine the Kurds getting one such offer, they'd be thrilled. And until you can get over that constant need to say no, there's really no way to reach peace other than making offers and getting past no.
Omar, what's your take on what you just heard and this event that, as we say, is certainly not a mainstream event, but it is getting underway nonetheless in Washington?
You know, it is an extremist position in one way that can be perceived, but it's also reflective of existing Israeli policy to some extent. I mean, Netanyahu's attitude is not to see Palestinians as equals, does not really have any regard for Palestinian national or human rights, and is proceeding in a way with building more and more settlements and occupation in a way to actually impose Israeli will on the Palestinians. But he's smarter than to say that out loud, because he knows how bad it sounds to any decent, sensible person that this is what Israel is actually doing.
I got to take issue with that.
Pays lip service to the idea of he pays lip service to the idea of a peace process, but that is not actually what is unfolding on the ground. And I think that this proposal is just a way of taking off the mask and showing what actual Israeli policy currently is. I don't think it's going to lead to anything positive, that's for sure.
Actual Israeli policy is that settlements have grown more slowly since Netanyahu came into office than they have at any point in Israel's history. Actual policy is there hasn't been a new settlement in 25 years. One was recently approved, but it hasn't actually been built yet. Actual policy is that the challenge that we're facing right now is that even though Netanyahu himself was involved in peace negotiations in 2009 and from 2012 to 2014, the official position of the Palestinian government is that they want to end the occupation and that the occupation is defined as all of Israel. And Mahmoud Abbas said...
That's factually incorrect.
Let's pause there then, and Omar, let you respond.
That is factually incorrect.
Omar, your response.
Look, this is absolutely factually incorrect. The Palestinians recognized Israel in 1988, and that launched the peace process with the idea that Israel would, in return for this recognition, withdraw from the Palestinian territories that were occupied in '67, a mere 20% of historic Palestine. The problem is that Israel did the exact opposite, is that throughout the peace process, it just continued to build more and more settlements. So this idea of a settlement slowdown, we're talking about theft of Palestinian land. It doesn't matter how fast or how slow it goes. It's illegitimate. The entire world is against it. The International Court of Justice is against it, the UN is against it, and every major human rights organization is against it. So whether it slows down or speeds up, I think is a bit of a minor issue. Still, the fundamental issue is that Israel is not interested in really ending the occupation. And that's why all these peace process efforts have led to a deadlock at the end of the day.
Well, Omar, you're certainly entitled to your opinion. The problem is that the Palestinian government and Mahmoud Abbas disagree with you. Abbas said on March 11th, 2016, all of Israel's occupation, and I quote, "We will fight until we reach our goal," which is the end of that occupation. The flag of Fatah, which is the governing body in the Palestinian Authority, is a picture of the entire state of Israel surrounded by rifles and grenades. The Fatah logo...
We're talking in parallel universes at this point. I mean, we're disputing things that are so obvious on their face. The UN General Assembly votes every year on the question of Palestine, calling for an Israeli withdrawal from the occupied territories. Virtually the entire world is on one side, agreeing with it, and then Israel votes against it. Where does that come from? And if what you're saying is correct, if this is really the problem, is that Palestinian rejection of Israel is the problem, then why is Israel continuing to build settlements in the Palestinian territories? That doesn't make any sense. Simply, it's belied by the fact on the ground.
Israel has, nobody wants to occupy. Nobody wants war, and nobody wants occupation. And that's why Israel has made 7 offers And there were 2 offers even before Israel existed. And there's nothing that Israel can do other than to continue making offers. And I think Israel will continue to do that. And while I'm not
continue to pretend to make offers while it takes more land on the ground in reality. And by the way, the most serious effort that Israel ever made for peace was actually made in 2000 at Camp David II. And Shlomo Ben Ami, who was Israel's foreign minister at the time, said that had he been Palestinian, he would not have accepted that peace offer.
Omar,
so that really just tells you about the kind of offers that Israel was making.
Omar Baddar, Daniel Pomerantz, stay here. If we're talking about, language and this particular initiative that's happening in Capitol Hill, their premise is that the conflict is over, deal with it. But that notion, just the idea that the conflict is over, is certainly not shared by the Palestinian public or leadership. So why go that route?
Well, if the conflict means an effort to take over all of Israel, the idea is that that effort has to come to an end. The way to end a conflict is to reach that point. Now, I want to respond to something about the Trump deal. We don't know the details of it, but there's no doubt that at this point the administration is serious about putting forward a deal. And just the other day, the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia summoned the Palestinian president, and he said to him, according to Israel's Channel 10, and I'm quoting, "Accept Trump's proposal or quit." Now, I don't know if that's going to get us where we need to be, but that seems to be the emerging trend in the Arab world, that it's time to finally put these differences aside and accept an independent state.
What do you think, Omar?
That might be the case with some governments that are kind of tired with the Israeli-Palestinian conflict and want to resort, basically get busy with other regional challenges that they're dealing with. But the question is, does Israel want to make peace with neighboring Arab governments, or does it want to have genuine acceptance in the region by the people of the region and a peace with the Palestinians? And as long as that is the actual aim, I think they're going to have to grant Palestinians freedom from occupation. There's just no way around it. We've had many decades of Israeli bombings and sieges and home demolitions, and the end result is that the conflict is still ongoing and Palestinian aspirations for freedom and independence are still present. So the idea of taking a more extreme approach to break them when that has not worked for many decades, I don't see how any thinking person can see that this is actually going to work out.
Well, by an attempt to break them, you mean 9 separate offers of independence and an end to occupation.
On that, unfortunately, we're ending without any real clarity. Certainly that never happens at the end of 10 minutes of conversation, if after several decades it has not, but important conversations nonetheless. Omar Baddar in Washington, thank you very much for weighing in right here